This is Disney Travel Tales, a trip report show helping you to become an expert at navigating your next Disney vacation. Join me every Friday for all things Disney related. Not traveling to Disney anytime soon? Never fear, we are still the show for you. Sit back, relax, and immerse yourself in someone else's trip. All the joy, none of the stress. All right, if you're ready, let's get to today's show. Hi, Sophie. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. You are a returning guest, and I love having returning guests, but this time you visited somewhere very special. Where did you visit?
So I was on the podcast last year when I did a Walt Disney World trip for my 30th birthday. And with a birthday in January, it's always great to book a trip away. So this year we went to Disneyland Paris. So very different weather, which I'll get into as I talk about the trip. But yeah, it was great to get back there as well.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you on today. You are my second guest that's ever been to Disneyland Paris, so this should be fun. So before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience with Disney vacations?
So I live in the UK. I live about 45 minutes from London, so fairly close to London, and I went to a Disney park for the first time when I was 24. I think. So have only been going for the last 7 or 8 years. And that was Disneyland Paris. So went to Disneyland Paris for the first time December 2016, I think. 2016. And then I became friends with a group that all had annual passes. So we then ended up going a few times a year to Disneyland Paris in my kind of mid-20s, which was great. All pre-pandemic, it was so much easier to do back then and a lot cheaper. So we used to go quite a lot. And one of my friends that I went on this trip with had a blog. I think they still have their blog. So I've also done a few press trips for it was like a plus one with them as well, which has been really fun. So
that is fun.
A lot of Disneyland Paris trips. And then I've been to Florida 3 times now. So
nice. So how far are you from Disneyland Paris?
So we were actually meant to fly on this trip. So I live about 10 minutes from Gatwick Airport on a train, which is very close for an airport. And flying, it would take about an hour to the airport that's closest to Disneyland Paris. And then there's a high-speed train that goes from there that's about 15, 20 minutes. So it's not far at all.
No.
When I used to go a lot, I lived in London, so I would get the Eurostar a lot more frequently. Eurostar used to do a direct train to Disneyland Paris, which I think was about 3.5 hours. And then they still do a indirect service where you change at Lille, which is in the north of France, and then change onto one of their kind of high-speed trains, or you can go into Paris, which is what we did this time. So it's about 3 hours into Paris from London. So
that's not bad at all.
It's not far.
Yeah.
It's quite nice and quite easy to do. But yeah, ideally I would have flown for this trip, but they cancelled our flights about 2 months before and moved them to an airport that was about an hour away from me. So at that point, it just made sense to get the train instead. We have also driven in the past, and it's about, from mine, it's probably about 2.5 to 3 hours to Dover, where you can get a ferry across, or you can get the Eurotunnel from Folkestone, so both are in Kent on the coast. And then once you get off the other side, it's about a 3-hour drive. So it's not even that, isn't that bad at all. So
you have a lot of good options.
If you're in kind of the south of England, along in kind of Kent, Surrey, that sort of area, it's very easy to get there, I think.
That's nice and dangerous.
England and Scotland and Wales are a bit further away, but flying still is just an hour and a half at most. So yeah.
That's really
It's
nice.
crazy how easy it is.
Yeah, like I said, that could be dangerous.
Yeah, and that's why we used to do so many trips, because we could, as a group, we'd go as a group of 4 of us and we'd share a room, and it would make the rooms a great price, and then have our annual passes, which at the time were about €250 for the year, which compared to the most expensive one now I think is about €600. So they have kind of been going up over the years. But they were nothing compared to the kind of US annual pass prices.
That's absolutely insane.
Yeah, it was worth doing when we did it, and I'm glad that we did. It's a lot more expensive now, but yeah.
Yeah, that's fun though. You had that nice little season in life. That's really fun.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about this trip. What were your dates of travel, and who did you travel with?
So we went the Monday the 15th to Thursday the 18th of January. And I went with my boyfriend Alex, and then 2 of my friends who hadn't been to Disneyland Paris since June 2019 and February 2020, so pre-pandemic. So Kelly and Hoodsie, so they came with us as well. Alex and I stayed at Newport Bay Club, so we booked our trip, and then I basically opened the invite out to everyone. It was one of the cheapest weeks of the year, which I think is just because it's very cold, and also just because it's off season, so it's between kind of anything too exciting happening. So I just opened the invite out, and they ended up booking. So they stayed at Sequoia Lodge Hotel, they're right next to each other, so it's nice and close.
That's fun. How many park days did y'all do?
So we did 4 park days. So we had probably half the day when we got there on the Monday, and then we were there until 5, I think, on the Thursday. So kind of quite long park days.
Yeah, that's nice.
Still, even with that.
So for anyone who doesn't know, at Disneyland Park, can you visit Disneyland Paris? Can you visit both parks? Do you need like a park hopper ticket, or can you just visit both parks?
So we booked with kind of the hotel package, and that was a park hopper ticket. I can't remember off the top of my head if they do individual tickets, but you'll see, especially on our last day, it very much makes sense to have the park hopper ticket, because they are in walking distance, and sometimes you'll just want to. I think we went back and forth about 3 times on our last day, so mostly because it was cold and things weren't open and things like that, so we were kind of doing that. I will get to that when it comes up, but yeah, I would recommend, if I can't remember if they do just a 1 park day ticket, which they probably do, but would very much recommend the park hopper ticket if you are doing a longer trip. I think if you're just doing 2 days, you could easily do 1 day in one park and 1 day in the other one, but yeah.
It's nice to have that option, especially if they are so close to each other. It's kind of like Disneyland in California. So
yeah,
always
which I haven't been to, but it is from what I've seen. It's very similar in terms of the walk between. So.
Okay, so let's just jump into your first day. What did y'all do on your first day? How did y'all get there, and how did travel go, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we were meant to fly initially, as I live so close to Gatwick Airport, but I think it was about 2 months before they cancelled our flights and moved us to a different airport, and at 7 a.m. rather than 8 a.m. So it was even earlier. We wouldn't have been able to get there. And at that point, my 2 friends hadn't booked their travel. So it made sense to just cancel our flights and book the Eurostar into Paris. So I think we got a train from mine at about 5:30 a.m. So very early start to the day. And it was about 45 minutes on the train to St. Pancras. And then so that was the 3 of us. So Alex and I and my friend Hoodsie. And then we met our friend Kelly, who had stayed in London with family. So she'd done that, and we met her at the station. And then we went through kind of baggage check and immigration, and it was very quick. So I think we got there at about 6:15. They advise an hour and a half beforehand. And when Alex and I went in May 2022, I think they were still having delays with kind of COVID and things like that, and staff, there being a lack of staff, and we queued throughout the entirety of like St Pancras Station, rather than just like the small bit that you would usually get through. So we didn't want that to happen again and it be a rush. So we did get there early and we got through bag check and immigration almost immediately. So it was slightly annoying that we did have quite a while at the station. So we had about an hour and a half. It's quite a small kind of area that you're in. It's, I guess, kind of like a lounge. There's a couple of coffee shops. So we grabbed some food. But initially we couldn't get any seats because there was a 7 a.m. train. We were on the 8 a.m. train. And they board you about 20 minutes before, and you're kind of all mingled in with everyone. So as soon as that 7 a.m. train boarded, loads of seats opened up. Yeah. It was quite quiet, so it was quite nice. But yeah, so we got the 8 a.m. train. We probably could have gone there earlier, but 5:30 wasn't early enough start for me. So we didn't go any earlier than that. And then the train was just under 3 hours. So France are an hour ahead. So we ended up getting in at 11:45. So I think it was about 2 hours, 45 minutes, which is super quick, really. And quite a nice journey. It's just very chill. It's not, they used to have an app on the Eurostar that when you went under the tunnel, you could do like a fake sort of VR thing looking at fish around you.
Oh, that's funny.
I think that's what everyone pictures in their head when they're going under like the sea.
Right.
It's not like that at all. There aren't any windows out, which you probably wouldn't want to see anyway. It would probably be filthy, not very nice. So, So that was the train into central Paris. So that goes to one of the big stations in Paris. And then we got the metro from there. So we've done that between us a couple of times and it's quite easy. It takes about an hour. But I think it was €2.50 for a ticket. So it's like really cheap. Mm-hmm. And then you get one train that goes one stop and then you change onto another metro train and then that takes you the entire way. And even on like the signs for that train, it has like a little Mickey on the signs to say like, this is where the destination is and things like that. So yeah, it's nice and easy. So I think we ended up getting to Disneyland Paris at 1:30. And then where you come out of the train station, you can either go through security and you're right at Disney Village, or there's the bus station there that takes you to the hotels. Okay. So you can just come straight out the station and hop into, like, go round to the bus stop and hop onto a bus to the hotels. And I think they take about 10 minutes, or they're every 10 minutes. So we only had a 5-minute wait in the end. It was nice and quick. Mm-hmm. So we headed round to our hotel, we checked in, our room wasn't ready at that point, so we just dropped our bags, and then Alex and I did the 10-minute walk over to the park. My friend's check-in took a little bit longer, so we ended up heading straight over, picked up I think it's called a magic pass, so you get a key card that basically has your park ticket on, your room key, almost as if you'd have a magic band, but it's a card. And that also has your details on it for like how many guests you are and things like that. So when you get extra magic hours in the morning, you just show them your card to kind of prove that you're a hotel guest.
Oh, that's nice. Where did you pick? Did you get that at your hotel or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we picked that up when we checked in, and even though the room wasn't ready, we got that. So we could then just head straight over to the parks. Mm-hmm. So it was about a 10-minute walk from Newport Bay Club to the parks. I've stayed in all of the hotels across the years that are there. So all of the on-site hotels, at most a 25-minute walk. So there's some that it does make sense to get the bus from if it's kind of cold or you've got younger children. Mm-hmm. But can walk from all of them, and it's not that bad. And you go through Disney Village, which is a very, very small version of Disney Springs. And then you're right there. So, yeah, it's nice and close, which is good.
That is nice.
Yeah, so we headed straight into the Disneyland park, and we were hungry at that point, so we went straight to Casey's Corner, and that's where we kind of waited until my friends caught up with us, because they were a little bit more delayed checking in. And then I think we just chilled there for a little bit and then headed to Pirates of the Caribbean. So it said it was a 10-minute queue, and it was about 15 in the end, but that was about 3 p.m. So that was our first ride, which was fun. The one in Paris is my favourite out of the two that I've done. Obviously, you have the one in California, but yeah, Paris has 2 drops, which is exciting. And yeah, it's just really great. Some of the new effects when they refurbed it a few years ago, which is awesome. So would recommend that. And then we walked over to Fantasyland, and at the back of Fantasyland, we've got the storybook boats, which is similar, I think, to the one in California, but they don't have anyone. The boats are on a track rather than someone driving the boats, because I think there they have them driving them. And I tried to look up all the names in French, because we just name them various things, and I'm not good at French, so I'm not going to butcher the pronunciation, but it translates to the Land of Fairy Tales, which I'd never looked up before, and I thought that was really nice, the name on that. So that was a walk on, and that is actually closing soon, because they're putting in Frozen and the 100 Acre Woods, Winnie the Pooh area and that, so it was nice to do it before then, but it would be great to kind of see those new kind of stories that they add into that. But it's, yeah, a nice small ride. And then they've also got Casey Jr. over there, which I think is slightly faster than the one in California. It's quite it's almost like a mini coaster, a bit like Barnstorm sort of thing. And that goes around where the storybook boats are, so that's really nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
That you can kind of see the other bits from there. And when we were, like, if the boats stop for any reason, they always wave up at the people on Casey Jr., which is nice.
That's cute.
So we did that, and then we kind of just had a bit of a mooch around Fantasyland. So we then walked over and we did Small World, which was only a 5-minute wait. So that was great. And then just kind of walked in a few of the shops before the parade at 5:30. So we got a spot for the parade, I think probably at about 5. It was very cold when we went. It was kind of one of the days, I think I noticed it, that we woke up and it was -6 Celsius, which I think is 20 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's very cold.
So I think it was a bit warmer on the first day that we were there, but it was still very cold. Kind of gloves, hand warmers. At one point I had foot warmers that are like the heated up ones, just to keep warm. So we didn't get spots for anything too early, just because standing in the cold was kind of not great. But yeah, so the parade is great. It's a little bit dated at this point, I think. So it came out for their 25th anniversary was when they introduced that, and so I think it could do with a bit of a refurb, but it is fun to see. And yeah, just a nice little parade that they have. And that starts at the gates up by Small World and comes kind of that way around. So
does it go like down through Main Street?
Yeah, so it starts up at the gates in Fantasyland next to Small World, and then it goes all the way along, and then it goes round the hub and kind of down it, and then goes in at the other end. Okay. So it's a nice long parade kind of route, so it's good to see. And then we walked from there over to Discoveryland, which is Disneyland Paris' version of Tomorrowland, which I love that area. It's got a very like steampunk vibe to it. I don't know if you've seen any pictures, but it looks great. It's such a nice area to kind of see at night as well with the lights on. And we walked over to Buzz Lightyear, which is pretty much the same as Disney World, but you can pick up the guns to shoot on the guns.
Okay.
Whereas rather than them being fixed. So I think it was a 5-minute posted wait, but because that's kind of the route that people feed out from watching the parade, it did go up slightly. So I think as we got in, there were a lot of people joining. And then after that, we walked through Fantasyland again and did a little... we did a bit of shopping. I can't remember if anyone bought anything, but it was nice to just kind of walk through all the different shops. The carousel was under refurb. I don't know if it still is when we were there, but so that was a shame because there were kind of walls up around that. Yeah. And that's kind of as it is in Disney World. It's kind of that focal point in the middle of that area in Fantasyland, so that was a shame. But then there were some food booths which I'd never seen in the Disneyland park before, over towards the kind of Small World area. So we went and had a look at those, and I think they're similar. So they do a food festival over in the Studios Park in Place de Remy. I think they do twice a year, potentially. I was trying to look to see whether it's the same as what it used to be. And so they do like a winter version, and they had crepes and waffles, and we got a cheese pretzel, and they're kind of more like traditional pretzels. I think they do booths from different like European countries and like different areas in France. They have like raclette and things like that. They had mulled wine, hot chocolate, that sort of thing. So I think when we then went to the studios, we realised they're the same booths. They've just put them in both parks. And I think from looking at it, they have the winter version that's there until kind of March time, and then they do a summer one with a slightly different menu.
That's
you're not going to be wanting like mulled wine in summer. So they do those, and they have those from June. I think the summer booths are there. So it's a nice addition. I know it was there pre-pandemic. I can't remember when they started it the first time. But the food at Disneyland Paris isn't the best, especially if you have visited the US parks, where there's a lot of kind of different range there and things like that. So when they added those in, it was quite a nice kind of addition to the parks, especially because it was initially, I think it was different regions of France, so you could try different foods from the different regions and things like that. So it's almost like a mini food and wine sort of style festival, but just all the booths in a line, so you can kind of go between them. But it was very busy when we were there. There were a few... I think one of the booths had different, like, cut-up fruit, and they did, like, chocolate-covered strawberries and stuff like that, and that was very busy. So they were very good. We got that... The first evening we were there, we got a cheese pretzel that we split, and then a hot chocolate, which was needed in the cold. And then after that, we headed to a few more shops and kind of just wandered around to get a spot for the fireworks. So they've got a new drone show that started the week before we went. I think it launched the Monday, the week prior.
Oh, that was good timing for y'all.
Yeah, so even though it was kind of off season when we went, that had launched. And so that started at 7:50, and then the fireworks were at 8. The drone show is incredible. So they had a drone show there for their 30th anniversary that we saw when Alex and I went in 2022. And this is just like a step up in terms of how incredible it is. So it's themed after the Main Street Electrical Parade. So it's kind of like some of those floats that in drone form. So they have the train, and the train has smoke coming out of it, which I didn't know drones could do that.
That's crazy.
So that was kind of cool. And then they've got like pirate ship for Peter Pan, and they've got like sparks coming off the back of that and things like that. Like just, yeah, very worth a watch. And so that was great. And then the fireworks were Disney Dreams, which was a show that they replaced for their 25th anniversary, and so many people wanted it back, so they brought it back temporarily last year, but it's still there, so I'm not sure how long it will be there, and there's no kind of announcement of anything else coming back to replace it, but it was great that they brought it back, and it was, I think it's a slightly dated version of kind of Happily Ever After. The music's not as great, but it's got a great storyline with Peter Pan's shadow, which is quite fun. So that was good to see.
So I have a question real quick about the fireworks show. Is the music in French or is it in English?
It's kind of 50-50.
Okay.
So there are some bits that they'll do in French, but then some songs they'll do in English as well. So that had Be Our Guest in it. So they did that in French because obviously it's France. So it kind of makes sense for that.
Yeah.
And I think it had The Hunchback of Notre Dame in it as well. So that was in French. And then they have kind of some songs in English. So you'll find with a lot of the shows, they will be kind of half and half. And a lot of the time for the shows themselves, they'll do, I know you've ridden Remy's in Epcot, and they'll do it similar to that, where they're saying the same thing in French and English, kind of repeating it back to themselves. So a lot of the shows are like that. We were talking about it, I think, before the trip, and I want to say there was some kind of agreement when Disneyland Paris opened, and it was that Mickey would always be in French. I might not be correct, but from what we've seen, that kind of is what happens. So we'll have Mickey say something in French, but Minnie will say, kind of repeating what he said back to him in English, or whoever's talking to him. So that seems to be the kind of rule around it. In terms of rides, most of the time, other than Remy's, they are in French. So Star Tours is in French unless you get a nice cast member who notices that there's a big group that speak English and they can switch it over. So we have asked previously and they have switched that over. But it really depends. They do prefer to have them in French, so you
That's
kind
of fun though.
Yeah, it is, and I think for the shows it's quite interesting having both. But for the fireworks they do kind of 50-50. Some songs in English, some songs in French, and the show that they had prior to Dreams coming back, there was a Frozen bit in that, and Let It Go was in French. But you'd have kids around you singing it in English or in the language that they speak. So it's quite nice having that kind of difference there. In terms of cast members, most of them speak English or will try and help you or find someone that does speak English. So I didn't study French at school, so I know kind of very little, and it's easy enough to kind of get by. So that's one thing I would say if you're kind of worried about that side of things. I've never experienced anyone that's not been able to help or is kind of rude about it. So yeah,
that's definitely good to know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we've watched a lot of vlogs and things like that of people, of American kind of vloggers going over to Tokyo and places like that. And for them, it's quite a cultural difference of them hearing everything in Japanese rather than being used to the American parks. But I think where we've had Disneyland Paris and having that kind of mixture of languages, or just kind of watching things and knowing it's in French and not necessarily understanding it, is quite like we're used to it for that side of things. So, yeah, it's fun. It's a difference. It was when I went to Disney World for the first time, I suddenly went, oh, now I can understand what C-3PO says in Star Tours, because I'd only ever had it in French. So I was like, hadn't kind of got that bit of the story. So it's quite funny doing it that way and not being used to kind of the story. But yeah, if you've been to the parks in the US and kind of know what that storyline is of Star Tours and him getting locked in there and that side of things. It's quite fun to then just sit and listen to it. So
yeah, because you can kind of follow along, and kind of with the songs too, like the Disney songs, so many people know them. So even if it's in another language, you still kind of know where they're at.
Yeah. And in your head, you're probably singing along to it in English. So it's quite nice as well, I think, for those stories that are set in France, that they do have those bits in French.
Yeah, for sure.
Just because it feels really nice. And when I get to the Pixar show that they have in the studios, which we went to on our second day, I think, there's a Coco bit in that, and that was in Spanish.
Oh, fun.
So they left that in Spanish, which was really nice, because you do get Spanish tourists coming over to France because it's so close.
For sure.
And going to the parks there as well, so that was nice to hear. Rather than them going for like the English or the French for that, and leaving it in Spanish, which was good.
That's awesome.
So the park closed. One thing to note about Disneyland Paris is that the fireworks are always at park close. So the park's closed at 8, and then the fireworks show was on for 20 minutes. So everyone is heading out at the same time, rather than it being fireworks at 8 and then the park closing at 9. So the village gets very busy. You do see a lot of families kind of going for dinner after the parade at 5:30 and then coming back for the fireworks. But we headed to Earl of Sandwich for dinner after the fireworks, and it was packed. It was so busy in there. So I think we ended up getting back to the hotel with our food as takeout at 9:30.
Oh, wow.
So from leaving the parks at about 8:30, it took an hour. And that walk is only 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So at that point, it was our first time seeing our room as well. And because it was just the two of us staying there. So they have all of their kind of regular rooms are called superior rooms at Newport Bay. Because it's a 4-star hotel, so it is one of the nicer ones. And actually, when I send you over some pictures, you'll see that Newport Bay is very much like Yacht Club in terms of the kind of feel of it. So it has that kind of nautical theme. The rooms are kind of the same. There's lots of kind of hidden Mickeys, which are really nice. And then around the border of the room, they've got little like peephole windows as if you were looking out of a ship, and they've got a few characters that pop up in there, which is quite nice. But because it was only the two of us rather than the standard kind of 2 double beds that you get, we'd been upgraded to a lakeside room, which was nice. We had a view of the lake, and then we were in a corner room, which meant we had double windows, so we had windows on 2 sides, which was really nice. And then we just had one like large double bed. I think it was a king size, but they list it as a large double, so it was a nice size. And then we had, because we didn't have that second bed in there was a lot of like space around, so it was just a really nice room that we had, which was great, and nice to be upgraded to that kind of lake view.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the hotel itself is quite large with lots of corridors, so it does feel like it takes ages to get to the kind of different rooms, but it wasn't bad. So that was day 1. Given that we got there at 1:30, we feel like we got a lot in.
Y'all did. I'm impressed.
And I think because it was so cold, I think for a lot of it, it was not wanting to stand around to do stuff. It was just like, let's get on another ride. Let's try and get everything in. So then we woke up for day 2, and that was the day that we woke up and it was -6 Celsius, so 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which is freezing. Lots of layers were needed. And so we ended up leaving the room at 8:20. Extra magic hours started at 8:30. I can't remember whether it's 30 minutes or an hour. It might be an hour. But so we were like, it's quiet enough that we don't necessarily need to get up and kind of make it in for that, because I think because it was so cold, even the guests that were there weren't leaving as early. So we headed straight there, and we got into the park about 8:45, and we jumped in the queue to meet Winnie the Pooh. He was meeting near the front of the park, and I had a like fleeced Winnie the Pooh bucket hat for warmth, but also because, well, it was too cold to wear ears, so I was like, that's a good in between. So we got to meet him, and I also got a new Winnie the Pooh loungefly for my birthday, so
Yay.
had to go meet him and show him that. And that was about a 15-minute wait, so it wasn't too bad at all. And then we stopped at the Market House Deli, which is kind of the cafe on Main Street. So there's no Starbucks in the parks in Paris. There is one in the village, which we then did on kind of our third and fourth day for breakfast. But in the parks, there's the Main Street Deli, and we grabbed a croissant and kind of an orange juice, and just chilled for a little bit. So we really didn't use that extra magic time very well, other than meeting Winnie the Pooh. But we did go and do Peter Pan's flight straight after that, and that was listed as a 15-minute wait, and we were on in 5. So, I mean, that was pretty good.
That's amazing.
Good for that. That ride is the same as every park, I think they have, where queues can be 45 minutes plus.
I just don't understand it. Because the ride never stops. Like, that ride, I don't understand.
It doesn't make sense.
No.
And I think the thing with a lot of the queues in Paris as well is that they're outside, which also doesn't make sense, given rain, snow, cold. I know we don't, well, they do also get the heat for needing aircon in the summer, but yeah, it's a shame that it's outside. The queue there is just not anything compared to the one in Florida, which is a shame. But so that was only 5 minutes, which was great. And then we headed to Dumbo, which was 5 minutes, but we walked on. That was the photo that I sent you with the frost on Dumbo. So before we got on, they were going around with a cloth and trying to wipe off some of that like ice layer that was on Dumbo. So it was very cold, but that was fun to do. And then we walked over to Phantom Manor and did that because that's indoors as well. So Phantom Manor is great. I do love Haunted Mansion, but I think having that different storyline there and how it's kind of worth looking at how it ties into Frontierland and that area, and really looking into that story because it's got a great kind of backstory and how it fits in with Big Thunder and all of that. But yeah, that's a really fun ride.
That's probably the ride because we're going to Disneyland Paris in March. That's probably the ride I am most excited to ride. I cannot wait.
It's great. We went on it again later in the trip, and it is also the ride that always seems to stop mid-ride, but I think that's the same as any Haunted Mansion, because it is that kind of loading with the walkway. So yeah, it is a good one. It's never been a big favourite of mine just because I don't think I have that nostalgia of Haunted Mansion and Phantom Manor, but it is great, and that was also renovated a couple of years ago, so yeah, updated the story there. So definitely worth doing. And then if you looked at a map, you would see that we were literally walking from one side of the park to the other. But it is nice and small, so it's not too bad. But we walked over to Star Tours, and that was a 15-minute wait listed, but I think we ended up waiting about 30 minutes. So I think one of the vehicles potentially went down in there. But yeah, as I said, it's the same as Disney World. It's got all the same scenes, and it's just dubbed in French a lot of the time. So yeah, we have, I think we went with my friend's niece once, and she, when she was kind of 7 or 8, asked if we could have it in English, and we got it in English then. But it really depends on the cast member, and if the majority of the people in that ride are French, they will usually leave it in French. But yeah, you just get used to it. It's still as fun as it is. And it was nice because we were front row on that, which I don't think I've done before. And usually it's quite narrow between between them, so it was nice to have that space in front of us. And then we got off of that, and the week before we went, they announced that the Mandalorian and Grogu were coming back as kind of a permanent meet. So rather than, I think in the US parks, they kind of roam around more than actually having a meet in front of the backdrop. So we joined the queue for that, and that was a 20-minute wait. So we got to meet him, Mando and Grogu, which was great. I love that. He's so cute, and it's such great technology of having Grogu there and the way he moves.
Because he looks real. Like when I saw him at Disney World, I was like, that looks real.
Yeah. It's crazy. So
it's amazing.
Yeah, that was good. And then we walked over from there. So Star Tours and where his meet are kind of in the back of Discoveryland. So behind Hyperspace Mountain, and then there's also the Nautilus walkthrough. It always has a wait time, but it is more of a walkthrough into the submarine, and that's also been renovated recently, so that was really cool to see. There's a new kind of peephole thing that opens that's got a screen behind it, and it's got various different sea life that go by when that opens, so that's fun. And again, a lot of this we were just going inside for the warmth. We were like, we'll sit in there for 5 minutes and hope that it's warmer than outside. And then again, we then walked all the way across to Adventureland, and we went for lunch at Colonel Haiti's outpost. So they do a Mickey-shaped pizza,
cute.
Which is fun. It's kind of just standard pizza. It's nothing great, but it was nice enough. And you get that. I think you get it with a side of garlic bread, like a garlic baguette. So that was delicious. Can't complain. And then that was kind of our day at the Disneyland park, and then we walked over to the Studios park for the afternoon. So when I went the trip before this, we were about 2 months out of Avengers Campus opening, so we missed that, which was a shame. So we wanted to go and check out Avengers Campus, and we saw Thor just wandering through Avengers Campus, which was great. And then we went to the Frozen musical invitation show, which was mostly just to warm us up. I think it would be fun for kids, but it's kind of, you've got 2 rooms and you watch a bit of the show where it's kind of Anna and Kristoff, and they do a bit of a song, and then there's a really cool Sven animatronic in there as well, and he kind of gets involved with them. And then you kind of move to a second room, but it's not kind of carousel of progress moving around. It's a get up, go to the next room and find seats again, and everyone kind of scrambles for seats. So it's not the best kind of organised, but and then in the second room it's kind of like inside Elsa's Snow Palace, so she comes out and does a song, and it's quite fun, and they teach you kind of Elsa's dance for Let It Go in the first room, and it's like, surprise her with this, and so I think kids would enjoy it, but we were just kind of mostly going to warm up and to see what it was like, but did feel a bit too old to be in there, which was a shame. It would be fun if it was like the one in Hollywood Studios, where it's kind of sing along, making fun of Frozen a little bit. Whereas it wasn't like that, which was a shame. So that was the 2:15 show of Frozen, and then as soon as we were out of there, we went to get in line for the Together, a Pixar musical, which is, I think it's about a 40-minute show.
Oh, wow.
It's a long show, but it is one of the best things I've seen. It's brilliant. They ask for no phones, no filming, no photos, and I think that really keeps the kind of magic of it, because we didn't know what to expect before going in. But there's a lot of kind of your Pixar characters in that, and as I said, there's a nice like Coco part in it, and some other great movies kind of pop up. and there's a live orchestra, which is very cool. So that's all I'll say, because it is worth kind of experiencing it. But that was fun, and we did do that again another day.
Hey, it's Jenny, just popping on real quick. Make sure to stay up to date with all things Disney news, all things Disney, Universal, cruising related by following me on Instagram at Disney Travel Tales. You can also find me on Facebook at Disney Travel Tales as well. If this episode is making you want to plan a Disney vacation, then I would love to help you. All of my services are completely free to my clients, so there really is no reason not to use a travel agent. Most people don't realize that when you go and book your own Disney vacation, you are already paying that travel agent fee. So why not take advantage of that and get all of those services that you're already going to be paying for? I would love to help you plan your next trip, so make sure to check the show notes for information on how to get in contact with me, my quote form, my email, and yeah, let's make 2024 the year you go to Disney.
But so they're kind of the two main shows that are in the studios. And then they also do usually have Mickey and the Magician, which is at the other theatre, which is one of my favourite shows. But that was closed at the time that we went. And I think it's to do with kind of French seasonal contracts that they have. It always seems to shut for a couple of months in winter, and then they get like a new cast for it. So I don't know how that works, but that's also a show worth seeing. I think it should be back when you go in March. So
okay, sounds good.
That as well. So after that, we then walked over to Place de Remy and we did Ratatouille, which was only a 20-minute wait. That is identical to the one in Epcot. So I think when they built the one in Epcot, they just lifted what they had in Paris. So we went and did that, and then we went to the food booths that were kind of outside there, and we got some chocolate-covered strawberries, which were nice, and walked through Toy Story Playland. So Slinky Dog Spin, which is a fun little ride. It's nothing like Slinky Dog Dash, but that was down, unfortunately. And then Parachute Drop and RC Racer are the two other rides there. And they had long queues. They're similar to Peter Pan in the sense that I don't know why they always have really long queues, but the ride time isn't very long for what you're waiting for. Yeah. So we kind of skip those. Parachute Drop is one to do if you want to have a look at any of the studios expansion. So when you go up in Parachute Drop, you can see over to where they're building like the Frozen area and the lake. So it would be fun for that, but we kind of skipped it at that point. And then we walked over to so they've got 2 Cars rides there. So they changed the old tram tour that they had and cut half of that down and changed that into like a Cars road trip, which I don't think is worth doing. It was closed when we went, but it is basically the tram tour, but with cars in as you go around. But they're not even the ones where like their faces and eyes move. They are just stationary vehicles with eyes. So I feel like they could have put in a bit more effort for that, but I think they put it in as a kind of a high capacity ride for kind of the summer whilst they're doing the renovations. So yeah, and then they've got Cars 4 Wheels Rally, which never knew what it was called, but it's similar to Alien Swirling Saucers in the sense it kind of, you're in the car, it spins and it moves between those platforms, but it's not got the same vehicle in the sense of where it kind of sways between, because I know with Alien Swirling Saucers it's like attached and it can move slightly between that and it's slightly more fun. Honestly, it was a little bit uncomfortable. So we had 2 adults in a car and there's a front and a back, and I was in the front because I was smaller, and the seats were very kind of narrow.
Interesting.
Narrow in terms of like I was sliding forwards and almost like falling off of the seat.
Yeah.
So they weren't deep.
So they're kind of made for kids.
Yeah.
Like short
I think
seats.
you usually have adult in the back, kids in the front, and they are those smaller seats. But because we were the four of us, we had 2 cars, so we did it that way. So it was fun, but it was fun because there wasn't any wait. We walked onto it, so it was kind of one of those, another ride to tick off. And I don't think all of our group had done it previously, so it was one to kind of get them to do that. And then we walked back over to the main Disneyland Park. So as I said, it's very easy to just kind of walk between the two. So we walked back over to there at 5, and we didn't watch the parade, but we walked over to Pirates, and it was a walk-on, so that was great. And then we went over to Fantasyland and did Voyage of Pinocchio, which is a dark ride, terrifying. I probably wouldn't go on with young children. We also have Snow White there, so, and the scary Snow White, not the new animated version. Both of them terrifying. I don't think I would take a young child on with me, just because, it's quite scary. But they were both 5-minute waits, so they're kind of next to each other. So we did Pinocchio and then Snow White. And then we went and did Buzz Lightyear again, and I think that was around a 30-minute wait. So again, I think when we did that was probably just after the parade had finished. Even though we didn't watch it, it was kind of that similar timing to the day before. So it picked up the queues because that's quite an easy one to get to. And then after that, we kind of sat in Videopolis, which is one of the quick service restaurants that's over in Discoveryland. And they have almost like theatre-like seating in like an amphitheatre sort of bit with a stage. The stage is sometimes used at Christmas. They have previously had like Mickey's Big Band on there and things like that. But as well as tables, but they have screens in there and they show some of the Mickey shorts. So I think at that point we were very cold. And so we just went over there to kind of warm up and wait there until we went to get a spot for the drone show. And that evening we did the drone show, but then left before the fireworks. Just because the drone show, I wouldn't want to miss it. And we only had the 2 evenings to see that. Because of something else that was on the next day. So we watched that, and then we kind of headed out, and we just went to McDonald's in the village, which, nice, quick, easy kind of meal, and did that, and we took it back to our room, and our friends came with us back to our room so all of the hotels have different character meets, but they do them at different times. So where they were staying at Sequoia Lodge, their meet was from like 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and they had different characters out every day. Whereas at our hotel, it was 7:30 p.m. until 9:30 p.m. So my friends wanted to see who was there, and I think that night it was Goofy, and he was in his like nautical kind of get up. So it was nice to see him. So they came up to our room, we just sat and ate our McDonald's, and then they met Goofy on the way out. I was too tired at that point. I was just like, it's fine. And I think it was Goofy that night, and then they did the same on the Wednesday night, and it was Pluto, but he didn't have anything special on. Which is a shame. They could have, I don't know whether he's got a little hat or... I know,
I mean, he's a dog.
They could have had. And I think the first night we were there, we didn't meet anyone, but it was Minnie that was out in kind of a nautical kind of outfit.
That's fun.
So they met him and then headed back to Sequoia, which... So when it's hard to explain, but there's the lake where the hotels are, and you've got the Art of Marvel Hotel New York at one end, and then Newport Bay on the other end, and then you've got Sequoia on the side. So actually, by the time they've walked around to Newport, even though that's not the way they would typically go back to Sequoia, they're right next to each other, so it was a very quick walk between them. So yeah, it was funny. One of the mornings we woke up and we looked out of the hotel, and Hotel New York, which is at the opposite end, was just in fog. That, like, it was just so kind of hazy and foggy that you just couldn't even see the hotel at the other end. So that was day 2, which I feel like was very busy. We were definitely going between the parks quite a lot. And then day 3 that we were there, which was the Wednesday, was my birthday. So we left the hotel at 8:30. Again, I think we woke up and it was freezing cold, and it was also raining that day. So wasn't the best weather day for us. But that was one of the days where we stopped at Starbucks. So we got a coffee, and they have a few like breakfast bits in there. So I think I got you can get like a stack of 3 pancakes with like a syrup.
Nice.
So we had maple and chocolate, and I think maybe strawberry and something else. Can't remember what. Oh, it might have been caramel. That was another option.
That sounds so good.
We grabbed those to go, and I was like, I'll kind of eat and dip them in. Like, I think I tore the pancakes up and just dipped them in to the dip as we were heading over to the Studios Park, and we got in the queue for Crush's Coaster. So Crush's Coaster is such a fun ride, but it's such a low capacity kind of load. So you get into the cars and they're almost like a turtle shell. So there's 2 of you sat on either side because it spins. But it's the 4 of you in that one car.
Gotcha.
So it is fairly kind of, the queues for that are horrific. Yeah. I think I would say if you are staying at a Disney hotel and you can get there for extra magic, to get there for extra magic. So even though we were a little bit late, the queue didn't say a time when we got there, but it was about 35 minutes. So, but we saw that at 80 minutes. And given some of the other rides were kind of 5 minutes or a walk on, it gets quite high.
Yeah.
And they have a single rider queue, but because it's 2 and 2, the single rider is very slow as well. So they do usually put a time on single rider, but I think even at times that was 45 minutes when the main queue was 60. So yeah, it's such a fun ride, but it's a shame that it takes so long to kind of load. So it was good that we did that morning, but that was kind of a one and done for us. We weren't doing that again, especially in a 4-day trip. And then we went over to Avengers Campus and we did Spider-Man Web Adventure, I think it's called there. It's exactly the same as California as far as I'm aware, other than the fact that they dub Tom Holland into French. And then have English subtitles, which seems very backwards to me when you've got like the actual actor there is like as Spider-Man.
That's funny.
So, and I find that was harder to follow as well because the subtitles were like off to the side. So you wanted to watch what was happening on the screen with the spider bots kind of escaping and all of that. Right. But to read it wasn't as easy. So I don't know if they'll ever change it to English with French subtitles. Friends that I have that are French wouldn't mind if it was in English because a lot of the time they watch the films in English with subtitles. Similar for Star Wars, I think, when they've had Star Wars things dubbed before, they've said everyone watches them in kind of English with subtitles just because the actors' voices are better in English. So it's a shame, but that was fun. The first time we did it, Alex and I are very competitive, and the first time I did it, I was winning, and then he beat me. I know it adds up a car score, and it's not individual, but we were definitely looking at it individually. And then the second time we did it, I beat him by quite a lot. So I was like, that's great. Absolutely killed my arms. I was very tired after it.
We did that in California, and I felt like my arms were going to fall off. Like, I was sore the next day. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
It's a short ride as well. It's not that long. So yeah, that was fun. And then we walked over to Flight Force, which is rock and roller coaster that's been changed into an Avengers roller coaster.
That's fun.
That's basically where our rock and roller coaster used to be. So they don't have that there anymore. And that has... So it's got Iron Man, but Iron Man in suit. So obviously it wasn't him that recorded that. And then you've got Captain Marvel kind of in it as well. So that's really fun. And she's obviously... so she's the English bit in that. And then Iron Man, they have in French. And it's got screens throughout the ride with them. And you're kind of trying to save the planet. It's fun, but it's very fast, obviously, being rock and roller. So you kind of miss what's going on a little bit. But so we went to do that, but I think it was only 10 minutes, but then they had a difficulty mid-queue, and they kind of walked us out and gave us a pass to come back and do that. And there was someone sat on the floor with paramedics before we boarded, so I'm assuming someone had a bit of a medical incident, and that was that. That queue though was very short every time that we looked at it. So we did end up going back a little bit later and doing it with the pass that they gave us. So we got to go in the like the Premier Access, which is their individual lightning lane, I guess, equivalent. And we could have done it with just in the queue because it was a walk on, but we used that pass just as we were here, we might as well go back and cut the queue and go that way. So we did go back and do that at some point in the day. But after that, we then had a bit of a wander, and then we went to book. They have like an Avengers, I think it's called Avengers Hero Training Centre, and it's like a meet and greet area, and you can either book a virtual queue to meet Spider-Man or a random Avenger.
Okay.
So you don't know who you're meeting before going in there. So we went to book a random Avenger, and you put kind of you do it through the app, and you do have your tickets on there. And as we were doing that, we realised that one of my friends had lost their Magic Pass. So kind of thankful that we went to do that, to see, to put their ticket number in and kind of do that and realise. And they just went over to guest services and they gave them a new pass and cancelled their other one. So that was nice and easy. I think they did have to then go back to the hotel check-in desk to get them to reactivate that pass with their room key. Thankfully, the Magic Pass doesn't say your room key on or anything like that. So anyone that picked that up couldn't have used that. They could have used it to get into the park, but guest services deactivated that. So it was kind of straightforward. So once my friend got back to us from being at guest services, that was when Flight Force was back up. So we went on that. And then grabbed some drinks and tried to find somewhere dry because it was absolutely chucking it down with rain that day. But that was when our time was called for the meet and greet. So that virtual queue it's not the same as the virtual queues for kind of Tron and Guardians where you have to get them in the morning and they not sell out because they're free, but you know what I mean, they run out of them. We did that kind of 30 minutes before we went in, and there was spaces. So nice. So I think in busier times it probably will fill up earlier in the morning, and then they open another one at 2:30, I think it is. But when we went, we did it probably at like 10 or 11 and managed to get in within 30 minutes. And our Avenger that we got to meet was Loki, which was really cool. So I think you can meet Loki. I don't know, actually. I haven't seen Loki, Thor, probably Captain Marvel. I'm not sure who else. But it is kind of that randomised, you don't know who you're getting. I don't know how long they stay there. I don't know whether if you got one for the afternoon it would be someone else. I don't know whether, because there's obviously different rooms that you can go into, I don't know whether different rooms have different characters that you can meet. I'm not quite sure the ins and outs of that. But it was fun, and it was something indoors. And I would say that that's a really fun meet and greet to do if you have a photo pass, because they have one of those like 180-degree cameras that pan of you, and you do like a pose, and it like gets you doing that. So we didn't end up saving ours because we didn't buy the photo pass. But that's kind of a fun extra that they have with that, which I think was great. And then there's another show in the Studios Park called the Disney Junior Dream Factory, which we'd seen little bits about, and it's kind of got that steampunk kind of vibe to it as well. So we were like, oh, that might be fun, because it was cold. And we looked earlier in the day, and they didn't have any times of shows up, so we didn't think it would actually be showing. But as we were kind of heading out of the park, or I think we might be heading to somewhere else, we saw that they were back up, so we went and watched that. So that was fun. That has Mickey, Minnie, and then some kind of Disney Junior favourites. So it's got Fancy Nancy and Vampirina that come out and do different bits in it. And then it's also got Timon, which is very random, but I think it's because they kind of talk about having the Lion Guard TV show come out, and then he shows up. So it was fun. We kind of sat there and watched that. I think it was like a 20-minute show, but kind of dancing, music. It was great. So that's worth watching, especially if you've got kind of younger ones. There were like bubbles and all of that kind of stuff that came out. So that was fun. And then, so that day we had a reservation at 1:30 for Pim Kitchen in Avengers Campus. So Pim in Paris is a table service buffet compared to in California, where it's a quick service. It's got the same kind of vibe to it. They have kind of giant burgers that are like the size of your plate that they'll cut you a slice of, and then they've got like mini sliders or giant hot dogs and mini hot dogs. They had a Caesar salad that had like giant croutons that were about this big, that were like almost like a small loaf of bread, and things like that. So that was fun. So we did that as it was my birthday. We were like, we'll book a buffet, one of the sit-down meals, and as a group, I think we've done most of the other restaurants at Disneyland Paris. So that was a new one that we decided to do. They had like teeny tiny brie cheeses, and then they had like a giant brie that you could cut slices of. So they did have a really good range of food. I think we all got a couple of plates each, and then the desserts were incredible. They had like a mini key lime pie, and like various other things that were really good. So we did that, and then I think we were all just very full up and very cold still. So at about 4:00 we headed back to the hotel for a rest. So my friends stayed at their hotel a little bit longer than we did, but Alex and I headed back out at 6. So we had like an hour and a half in the hotel. So we headed back out at 6, and we were on Phantom Manor by 6:20. So nice and quick back to the park, and then there was no queue. And then Pirates was a walk-on as well, so we did that. That had a little bit of a backlog as we were trying to get off the ride, and the ride closed as we were getting off, and someone had dropped, I think, a phone or something like that over the side of as they were getting off. And that's obviously where all the mechanics are to like haul the boats along. So they were trying to find that and then shut the ride. So not ideal. Hold on to your stuff as you're getting off the ride. Not what you'd want to do, kind of dropping anything in that, because if it got between the cogs and all of that, it could have really messed everything up. And then we walked over to Star Tours. So my friends met us at about 7:00, and I decided not to do Star Tours at that point. So the plan was, I think it was only listed as a 15-minute wait. So the plan was to do that and then do Hyperspace Mountain. And Star Tours makes me a little bit queasy. So I was like, I can't do that and then Hyperspace.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, the queue was a lot longer. So I was waiting for them and I think they got off at 7:45. So we didn't end up doing Hyperspace. I probably could have done Star Tours. But I just kind of, there's a like Star Wars shop at the end of the queue and I just looked around that. It's always a bit like the one in Hollywood Studios, which I can't think of the name of, that's at the back, where they had the Little Mermaid show, and then yeah, it's kind of over it. It's similar to that kind of layout.
Okay.
So I just kind of waited in there and just sat down for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then we walked over and we got a spot for the fireworks show about 10 minutes before. So on the Wednesday night of our trip, the drone show wasn't on that night, and that was because they had Disney Dreams at 8, and then after Disney Dreams they did a show called Magic Over Disney, which was a show that was on for 3 nights in January.
Oh, wow.
So it was on the 17th, so it was on for my birthday. I was like, thanks, birthday fireworks show. And then I think it was on twice the following week, and it was very kind of DJ music heavy and very firework heavy. So there were some projections, but it was a lot of kind of Disney songs, but dance, more kind of dance vibes, and then a lot of fireworks, like just constantly going off. So it was fun. The night we saw it, because of the weather, and I think because it had been raining, the smoke from the fireworks just kind of engulfed the castle a couple of times. So at times the castle just disappeared, which was quite fun to see. But yeah, it was interesting to have an extra show whilst we were there.
I wonder if they're like trying out a new show to see what people's reactions are.
I'm not sure. I feel like they did it. I don't know whether it's like a different entertainment team or something, that they're just like, here's your budget for the year, and they blew it in 3 days. Not sure if it's that, or I feel like they've done it previously, and they tend to do it. I think they trialled it on the lake in the village at one point, where the hotels are. So I'm not sure. Not sure what it is, whether it's just
crazy.
Like different people in like visiting the park, so they decided to do that. That day the First Lady of France had been in the parks as well. So we didn't see her, but there was like a children's charity that I think she's patron of, that they were there. There was a lot of press around that as well, but we didn't notice it in terms of crowd levels or anything like that.
That's
which
nice.
is good. But yeah, so I don't know whether it was because she was there and that like kind of, or they had them come that day because that show was on. But yeah, it was very strange. It was just randomly on for 3 nights in January. And yeah, it did feel like they very much blew their budget on fireworks very quickly. There was so many fireworks. So yeah, bit of an interesting one. And then we headed to kind of the Emporium and some of the shops along. I think we did the Emporium and then we did World of Disney in the village just to get some gifts because we were leaving the next day, so I wanted to get those and pack them with our bags. And then we walked over to Hotel New York for just a bit of a look around. So my 2 friends that we were with hadn't been and hadn't seen it. Alex and I did the buffet restaurant there the year prior, or 2022, which I'm going to say is my favourite food on property.
Oh, wow.
It's very hard to get a reservation, and we did try to get one for this trip. But it's kind of in the theme of Avengers. It's a mix of like American New York style with Italian, and then kind of a Chinese like dim sum. It's kind of a big mixture, but the food, amazing. Some of the best food that I've eaten there. So So we'd been before, and there's in the kind of lobby and the corridors there's different artwork and things like that. So we went to have a look at that. And then we looked at the Skyline Bar as well, which is really cool. It's got those like screens that make it look like you're looking over the New York skyline, and you can see like Spider-Man swinging around at times and things like that. That was really busy, so we didn't go in, but we kind of had a look. Because I think all of us had stayed at Hotel New York before it had been renovated. So it was just nice to look in and do that. And then we headed back to our hotel. So I got the hotel pin from the gift shop, which I didn't really buy much the whole trip. But they've got some new pin designs for the hotels now, compared to the set that I got back when I stayed at all the hotels. They were kind of, that was almost like a set that fit together, whereas all the same design, whereas they're now doing very kind of unique designs for each hotel.
That's cool.
We grabbed that pin. Not all the hotels have them yet, I don't think, because they didn't have a Sequoia pin. But they had that in ours, and they had like a Newport Bay range that has like a candle and a diffuser and a few different things like that. And then we also just grabbed a drink and snack from there. So I think the big thing about the Disneyland Paris hotels is that the restaurants that they have are all table service. So there's not really, other than kind of McDonald's and Earl of Sandwich in the village, there's not really anywhere that you can just grab a quick evening meal, which we were all saying that is what's needed at the hotel, which is a shame. So I think all of them have like a buffet, and then some of the other hotels have a like sit-down table service meal. And so because we'd done the buffet at lunch, we weren't too hungry. So I think we just grabbed a bag of crisps, chips, and a drink, and just had that for dinner, which isn't the healthiest of dinners. We were very full from the night before. So we headed back to the room and then just packed and got ready to check out the next morning. And then our last day, so that was the Thursday, I think we ended up leaving the room at about 9. So we didn't get up too early that morning. It had snowed overnight, and it was icy. It looked amazing in the snow, but I think a lot of the cast members come along and kind of scrape away that snow, and then it just turns into slush on like the walking paths and things like that. So, and because it was still kind of freezing, it was still then icing over. So we dropped our bags at bag drop, slowly walked into the park, and it had to be very slow because there were bits of ice where we were slipping around on. So it was, we got breakfast at Starbucks again, and then we got to the park at 9:45. And we went straight to Fantasyland. So you can usually walk through the castle, but they had bits of the paths around the castle kind of shut off because they were really icy. But we walked around to Fantasyland and did the teacups. And then everything else we wanted to do was closed. And I think it's because everything was frozen. So we didn't end up getting to do the railroad, which was a shame. And I think that was because they had snow and ice on the tracks. So that was a shame. And then a lot of the other rides just hadn't opened. So Big Thunder Mountain was on our list for that day, and in the morning it was closed. And then I can't remember what else we had on our list, but it was just, I'm glad we didn't get up early and get there for Extra Magic, because barely any of the rides were open, which was, downfall of going in January when it snows and ice is over. But so I think because of that, we ended up going over to the studios at about 10:30, and we got a spot in the queue for the Pixar show that was at 11:10. So I think we joined the queue about 25 minutes before, and we watched that. And then that was done just before 12, and so we then walked back over to the Disneyland Park, and there is a cafe that's at the end of Main Street called Victoria's, and it's almost a cross between a quick service and table service. So they have things like Mickey waffles, and they had like salted caramel Mickey waffle, which like the big ones that you would get. And they do like hot chocolates and nice like lattes and things. So we wanted to do that because that opened at 12. But it was closed when we got there. So one thing about Disneyland Paris is that they say they're going to open at times and then things just don't open, which is a shame because we'd left it. But we did get to go back later in the day. But yeah, there are times where things will even not have firm kind of opening and closing times.
That's so crazy.
I don't know whether it was just that staff couldn't get in because of the weather. But it was just, they just didn't open. Didn't say when they were opening. And then, things for restaurants, I don't think they update the app to say whether it's open or closed outside of like, these are the standard opening times, which was a shame. But yeah, so we then went and joined the queue for Big Thunder Mountain because that would come back up at 12:25, and that said it was a 55-minute wait, so just under an hour, and it pretty much was. So that was freezing doing that in the cold. I think I had my coat hood up and I had my scarf around my face, and I was like, I think Alex bought like one of the reusable masks from like COVID times, just to keep his face warm. So that was cold, but that is I think that is the best Big Thunder Mountain. I'm gonna say it. I think it's more intense than the ones in Florida and California, because I know they're technically the same track, just backwards in California, I think it is.
California's a little bit different, but it's not intense. Neither of them are intense.
It's funny, my friend that I go with calls the one in Florida Little Thunder Hill, because it is definitely not Big Thunder Mountain. And that was having done the one in Paris quite a lot before doing the one in Florida, getting off and being quite disappointed. So that was really fun, and it just had snow covering the mountain as well, so it looked so stunning, kind of, because the mountain in Paris is in the middle of a lake, so when you get on the ride, you technically go in a tunnel under the lake and up to the mountain. So it's really fun, and it just looks amazing, and it looked really nice in the snow. So we did that, and then we went back over to Victoria's, and it was open, so we got our Mickey waffle and our hot chocolate. And then we went and did Hyperspace Mountain. So that was, I think, the only ride that we really wanted to do that we hadn't done the whole trip. So that's, again, a very intense version of Space Mountain, with the Star Wars overlay. It has loops. It is probably rock and roller coaster level of like roller coaster.
That's fun.
So be warned when you go and do it if you're not too into kind of high speed roller coasters. But it is very different to the two over in the US. So it's so much fun. I love doing it. It's a great roller coaster. The only thing I would say is the restraints that they have on that roller coaster always seem to catch your hair. So you've got long hair, I would tie it up, and kind of, I tucked mine into my t-shirt, so like into my coat, so it wouldn't get caught. But I feel like every time I go on there with friends that have longer hair, they come off and they're like, ow, my hair got caught in the restraint as I was lifting that. And then we walked back over to the studios. So again, this is very much our day where we were like flip-flopping between the parks. So we went back over to the studios, and we went to Stark Kitchen, which is the quick service in Avengers Campus. And they had really nice slices of pizza, and they had pasta bowls and things like that. But it was almost like a focaccia base, like pizza. So with like, I think Alex and I split one, and I think it was like mozzarella and prosciutto. So it was like a really nice pizza. And because we'd split the waffle that we had over at Victoria's, we then split kind of a pizza slice just as a small meal for lunch. And then we went and did Spider-Man again. And that said it was 40 minutes. So we jumped into that queue and it was only 25 minutes. So that was great. And then because that was only 25 minutes, we had time to go and do Ratatouille, as that was only 10 minutes. 10 minutes compared to Epcot queues is kind of crazy for that. So,
it's crazy. I've never seen it like less than 45 minutes at Epcot.
Yeah, I think we did it in Epcot and it was about 45.
Yeah.
So we did that, and they were actually trying to keep the outside queue of that clear because there was ice. So they were basically splitting people between the regular queue and the Premier Access queue. It was pretty much a walk on.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up going down the Premier Access queue, but they weren't they didn't have the whole queue open just because of the ice. So yeah, and then after that we walked back to the hotel. So I think by that point it was about 5:00. Our Eurostar home was at 9 p.m. So we needed to, kind of working backwards, we needed to be there for about 7:30. Takes about an hour. It was a good thing that we left a little bit of time because we did have a couple of waits for the metro trains that we were getting. And then obviously picking up bags and then getting the bus to the train station. You kind of don't know how long those bits are going to take. The only thing I would say, if people are getting late Eurostars, is that we got there at 7:30 and we were like, we'll get food once we go through, and the cafes that they had in there had barely anything left. So they usually like pastries and sandwiches that they make every day, and because it was the last train, nothing. So I think we got a couple of like pre-packaged sandwiches in the like small kind of shop that had like crisps and drinks, and then we got, I think, the last baguette in one of the like cafe bits that was there. And we were some of the first to get through, and it kind of filled up after that. So they do have food. They have a food car on the train. So they usually have like, I think we got ham and cheese baguette, and they have those on the train. But we probably should have got food before we went through, because you can take food and drinks through, and there's no like liquids limit on the Eurostar, so you can.
Oh, that's good to know.
A drink or have a water bottle that's full up and things like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that is the other perk with the Eurostar, is that you get, I think you get 2 pieces of luggage each, so you get 2 kind of cases that you don't pay extra for, and then toiletries you can take full size of everything through, so there's no limit on those. So yeah, and then we got home, I think we got off the Eurostar at 11ish p.m. So there were some speed restrictions in the north of France because of the ice on the tracks, so we ended up being, I think, about 15 or 20 minutes later than we should have been. And then we got home to ours at just after midnight, so a very long day.
Yeah, that was a long day.
For an hour ahead, so it was about 1:30 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
Like, our minds, but it was worth it. And I think, especially at that time of the year, you can kind of get everything done in 4 days and have short rides, short queue times. So it was definitely worth it from that sense of kind of going when we went, and getting to do everything. So
yeah, y'all had a great trip. Y'all got to do, it sounds like, pretty much everything that was open.
Yeah, so I think the only thing we didn't do that we wanted to was the railroad, and then my friend would have done RC Racer because they'd never done that before, and wanted to do it, but that was a queue that was just kind of 45 minutes, and it's a short ride for what it is. So we kind of skipped that one, but I think that's it out of everything that we didn't really do. Oh, and Indiana Jones. There's an Indiana Jones roller coaster in Paris.
That's cool.
It used to go backwards. It now doesn't. It now goes forwards. It's a very quick ride as well. It's quite short, but it is fun. So I think we were watching the Behind the Attraction show on Disney Plus, and I have a feeling that one of the parks in Asia also have the Indiana Jones like roller coaster that we have. So yeah, I think it's kind of identical, but it is quite a unique kind of ride that they have, and that's in the back of Adventureland. But we didn't even go past it when we were there, so yeah, it's a shame we didn't do it. But in the cold, outdoor roller coasters are not ideal. Kind of get that wind chill as you're going quite fast.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That's so fun. One thing I love is that the parks will have different rides, or even if it's the same ride, they tweak it to make it a little bit different. So it's just interesting to kind of get to travel around and try them all out.
Yeah, and it is I think for us over here, there's a lot of times where we're like, oh, I wish we had what they had in Disney World and Disneyland. But also it kind of gives a reason to go over and visit those parks.
Very
so
true.
Disneyland is next on our list. So we're hoping to do that potentially next year now. But yeah, that's kind of the next park to hit for us before eventually doing the 3 over in Asia. But yeah, I just love that they all have differences between them. And then obviously Disneyland Paris, the Studios park there, is getting a big expansion at the moment, so they're building Frozen. Frozen at the moment, we're not sure what's going to happen next. Initially, they had hinted at a smaller version of Galaxy's Edge, but it sounds like that's not happening anymore. So, yeah, means we have to keep going back, which is great.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's the other thing as well, kind of seeing them changing all the time and having new things to go back for is nice.
It's always fun. Yeah. Okay, so looking back on your trip, what was your least magical moment?
Oh, I think it was probably just the weather. And we knew it would be cold. I've been in January and February before, and you get like the fountains get frozen over and things like that. And we knew it would be cold. But I think on the Wednesday, which was my birthday, it just chucked it down with rain the whole way. And so that was really difficult, kind of keeping warm and also keeping dry and finding kind of the things to do in that. And then also it did put a bit of a downer on the Thursday when things weren't open in the morning. So it's kind of hard I don't think I've ever been there where it's been so cold or frozen or snowy and that they haven't been able to open rides. So that was a bit of a surprise.
Well, it was funny because people over here are like, oh my gosh, look how beautiful it is. I wish I was there. And then you messaged me and you were like, the rides are closed because the tracks are frozen. And so I told some of my friends that are also travel agents, and they were like, I would have never thought of that.
It's the first time I think I've experienced that. But yeah, I've been when it's been cold. I don't know whether it was as cold as it had been on that trip. But yeah, we just never really experienced kind of waking up, getting there and nothing being open. So yeah, it was crazy because Dumbo wasn't open that morning. And I think it was because like the ride mechanics were just frozen.
Yeah.
Or they were clearing ice from the paths and things like that, just to make sure it was safe for everyone to walk around. So yeah, it was crazy.
That is crazy. What was your most magical moment?
Oh, I think that's hard. I think just being there with like my 2 friends that came and they hadn't been on trips since before the pandemic. So we went for my friend his 30th in February 2020. So that was the last time we'd been together. And we used to do trips quite often. And then my friend Kelly had been to Florida with us November 2019, but hadn't been to Paris since a few months before that. So I think getting like them and experiencing it and being there with them, having not been in quite a few years when we used to go so regularly, and also the drone show was just incredible. Like I would watch that every night if I could. And it was a shame it wasn't on that night where that other show was on. But yeah, it's the technology with drones now. I can't wait till they start doing it in other parks. We were talking about it the other day and we were like, it would be perfect for Epcot to have kind of that show above the lake. I don't know if they could, because I don't know if they can technically have them going over people. I don't know what the kind of regulations are with that. But yeah, I know the company that does the drone show in Paris has just opened an office in Florida. So there is hope that will head over. And actually just the shows in Paris are some of the best shows I've seen. Like the entertainment teams there are just incredible. So Mickey and the Magician, definitely go and see it if it's on when you're there. And also the Pixar one is fun as well. So
that's so fun. I can't wait. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show again and sharing your story. And whenever you get over to Disneyland, California, I love having guests who've been like to a park for the first time come on. So I'll have to have you come back on. That's a wrap on today's show. As always, thanks for listening. Make sure to visit us on Instagram at Disney Travel Tales. If you're wanting to support the show, the best and easiest way to do that is to leave a 5-star positive review on Apple Podcasts. It's so easy and means the world to me. Can't wait to be back next week with you. So until then, this is Jenny, and may all your Disney travel dreams come true. Hi, this is Jenny, just popping on with some exciting news. I've started a Facebook group just for you. I'm really excited about this because not only will this be a great opportunity to get to know each other, but this is also a safe space to talk all things Disney. Members can share travel tips, resort tips, likes and dislikes, and the best part is this will give you an opportunity to talk to the guest on the show and ask them questions about their trips. I was trying to think of a fun name for us, and Disney Travel Tales Podcast Clubhouse came to mind. This is a private group, and of course, I will not allow anyone to be bullied or talked down to. I just want this space to be positive and fun. Check the show notes for a link to join, or just search Disney Travel Tales Podcast Clubhouse in Facebook. I can't wait to see you over there.